Hello, this is Julian with Coffee Reviews, and today we'll be reviewing Day 6 of KaffeBox's Advent Calendar, featuring the Las Margaritas Natural Geisha from Kafferaven. And there's the container right there. Alright, interesting side note. It looks like the Day 2 coffee I'd reviewed from Kafferaven was also a Las Margaritas Costa Rica. So this is kind of nice that I'll get to compare these two coffees side by side. Let me talk a little bit about Kafferaven real quick. So they are based out of Gothenburg, Sweden, and that first coffee I tried from them was the first ever coffee I tried from them. I wasn't the biggest fan of it because I don't love the taste of apple acidity. It's probably one of my least favorite flavors that come from a lot of coffee roasters. So I thought they did an amazing job, and I do want to emphasize that because I thought it was probably one of the best done cups of coffee I'd had so far, but it just wasn't my favorite. Let me go ahead and try to talk about this coffee though, because this coffee was a pretty tricky coffee. Alright, so the first thing I got when I opened the container was it smelled what I would describe as desserty. And then when I ground the coffee, it was very fruity. And as soon as I poured the bloom, it smelled very fruity, and I kind of assumed at this point that it was either a natural or an anaerobic coffee without knowing what I was drinking. And then the first sip I got, it was a pretty strong grape flavor, but after that it kind of dissipated, and the things I was tasting were what I would describe as a very unripe, not very unripe, but an unripe pineapple and vanilla flavor. And those two things were by far the most prominent thing I was tasting in this coffee throughout the entire time I was drinking this coffee. Very strong and very notable flavors. But this coffee was pretty tricky and complex because there were so many flavors from this coffee that I'm hoping I can recall all of them. I was getting quite a bit of cherry, some mango, some passion fruit, what I would describe as a kind of like soft chocolate wafer, some slight florals, maybe a bit of honey. It was a pretty wild cup of coffee because there were just so many flavors coming from it. And actually, now it's kind of hitting me again. There was a bit of what I would describe as maybe like an apple cider. And looking at these flavor notes, it makes a lot of sense. Probably the grape I was getting was this winey that they have on here, this mature stone fruit. Red apple, viola, vanilla, tropical fruit, pineapple. So kind of in line, a little different from what I was getting, but I would say pretty similar anyway. Let me go ahead and put up the tasting wheel though so you can see what I was getting, and the first thing that will jump out, of course, is that citrus fruit. Probably one of the most strong pineapple flavors I had ever gotten from any coffee. I think maybe the unripe comes from the vanilla, kind of the combination of those two flavors made it taste unripe to me in a weird way. Stone fruit, pretty high. Pretty sweet, pretty strong finish, and the things that come off pretty low. Of course, not the cleanest cup of coffee, definitely not the cleanest cup of coffee, and pretty low on the body. But one thing I do want to note, and I really want to note this because I've been so impressed by this, is how they are able to make a citrus fruit so strong and prominent, but the acidity has been pretty low. This has been pretty consistent with a lot of these Scandinavian roasters, is they keep the acidity down in a lot of these coffees, which I'm really loving. I don't love overly acidic coffees, so another testament to how good I think they're doing on this process. This is really impressive. So let me go ahead and kind of compare these two side by side, because I came up with an interesting thought between the red honey and this natural. I definitely like the flavor of this natural better, but I think I liked the way the other one was done better, because I think just maybe the balance, it was a more drinkable cup of coffee for me. Whereas this one, while it has some really nice flavors to it, I'm not enjoying the lack of cleanliness in this coffee, and pretty strong vanilla, while it's good, I think the really, really strong flavors in this aren't as enjoyable as I would hope or I would expect. Probably a lot of similarities to some of the naturals from Onyx that I didn't necessarily love, but I think that's kind of just the best way I can compare those two coffees to each other. So maybe Kafferaven isn't my specific preference for a Scandinavian coffee roaster, because I've liked a lot of the other coffees a little better, but I think I would definitely be willing to give some other coffees of theirs some tries. So who would I suggest this coffee to? And I think it's actually perfect. I would suggest this coffee to people that really like their natural onyx coffees, because I can draw a lot of comparisons and similarities to those two coffees, especially in the strong flavor profiles I'm getting from them. So I think I will leave it at that, and since this is probably going to be the last Kafferaven I try in this advent calendar, I would love to know what you thought of both these two coffees, especially if you've tried them. If you're enjoying the content, give this video a like and subscribe if you're not already subscribed. This right here has been a review of the Las Margaritas Natural Geisha from Kafferaven. Thank you for watching.